Exactly 1 year ago to the date, June 22nd, I abandoned all social media, all platforms. Now, this wasn't a decision I'd made, but it was more like a state of emergency to evacuate.
Come with me if you want to live.
And I had no clue how long my sojourn would be. And so here we are, a year on in. And these are my observations and my breakdown, my analysis on social media as it is today. And I think even more importantly, where it's heading and why I think my instincts and my impulse to do this was so bang on. Now, I titled this video Escape from the Funhouse, and it's in reference to the book called Lost in the Funhouse by John Barth. The book is sort of a pillar in modern meta existential American literature, and I hope that's not too pretentious of me. It's certainly not my intention to be come across as a book snob at all. It's just a book I'd read a long time ago, and I remember finding it very compelling in that the book it deals with narration and sort of the deconstruction of narrative and narrator, the narrator, and structure, and even typography. The reason why I'm referencing it with social media is because that book was almost like data in the way it was written. Regardless, that's what social media felt like to me. Feels like that analogy of the funhouse, right? In that social media, it is quite somewhat akin to being lost in a funhouse full of garish clowns and characters and distorted mirrors. And the concept of the narrator, which is a big theme in John Barth's book. The narrator, who is the narrator? It should be us, right? And yet one finds oneself sort of lost in the static, right? Not knowing who's narrating the story. Our story, my story, your story, one story. Social media can leave one feeling like a fool on the hill, to quote the Beatles song, an epic song by the Beatles, Fool on the Hill. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. The same theme, sort of, a fool on the hill, hoping to be noticed, recognized, hoping to be heard, but no one hears him. He's just a fool on the hill. And that is exactly how social media, I believe, makes a lot of people feel, most people, lost in translation, in which the algorithm has hijacked the narration. That rhymed, I just realized. But it's sort of like sinking into one's own bog. It's just not knowing how to call oneself out. Being lost in one's own maze of distorted mirrors, as in the Funhouse reference, and not able to really see oneself until that sudden rude moment comes along in which you finally actually do, and it can leave you feeling quite naked to the night and sort of self-cringing in your overexposure. At least for myself, in which it was quite evident of just how disattached I was and lost from any sort of sense of the organic self. But I was rather sort of tethered to this juvenile, desperate projection. And all this was made manifest, or sort of digitally made manifest, in this feed of one's own selfie Freudian slips, so to speak. And it was quite embarrassing to myself. Well, this modern phenomena of the social media apparatus is really just pinging everyone's neuroses and desperation across the fabric of cyberspace. And I believe that these current generations, this first wave of this, are sort of like the etchings of early man in the caves, right? Only in digital form. And it's all so reductive, isn't it? In that it has reduced the global populace into a sort of globally interconnected toxic high school. Social media is the macrocosm of the microcosm of high school and all of its, toxic and trauma-inducing social politics and hierarchies. And you can see how it all sort of plays out, the layout of social media, very much like the school cafeteria at lunch hour, where everyone's sequestered into their different social classes. You have the one side of the lunch tables where all the popular kids hang out, the jocks, the cheerleaders, all the popular kids. And they would be kind of like, I guess, similar to like the influencers. I hate that term. It's so implicit in the terminology itself as to have influence over you, right? It's this sort of corporate sponsored hashtag dictatorship. So I really despise that term. Now, I'm not going to, point fingers or blame people who are so-called influencers, content creators. They're just part of the machine too. And this is something that's much bigger than the species of the Homo sapien itself, right? The sort of technocratic egregore monster that is hurting people and culture like cattle, dictating, what it is that is now popular to wear at the moment, who and what is now canceled, or who and what is now supported. And the monster of modern digital culture and its trending, the trending has become so monotonous. It's almost like the beast is eating itself at this point now, sort of eating of itself and regurgitating itself at the same time in sort of a loop, kind of like the Ouroboros, the serpent that's eating its own tail and throwing itself back up, only in like smaller and smaller loops, right? Now, I made some bullet points that I've written down here because I knew this was going to happen, that I'd get lost in Wonderland, so to speak, and go off on all these tangents. So to keep this as streamlined as possible, I apologize for all the ranting. These are some of the deep observations I've made, and I'm sure many of you can probably see that too. But what's really concerning, and what I was mentioning earlier, in that my impulse to disengage and sort of reconstruct myself and get my bearings, get a foothold on a sense of an organic self within my organic mind, my organic brain, and realign my physiology. It's been observed scientifically that social media, it affects your physiology, the dopamine levels and your endocrine system, particularly for men. There's a lot of competition that is sort of triggered, that word. It's kind of the word of the age, isn't it? To be triggered. But that's exactly what's happening. As you see, like, everybody is, like I said, it's like a big high school. Everybody wants to be part of the cool crowd. And you can see that exemplified, like in, let's say, Instagram. You see all these guys. I mean, everyone wants to be the new Instagram it boy, and it's kind of like, and I'm not that I'm downgrading or criticizing or shaming masculine beauty or male fitness at all. As a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. I completely in support and encourage male fitness and masculine beauty. But it's just, you see what's happening online. You see all these guys, they with the ripped abs, the meaty package, and the same sort of vacant look on their face, posting day in, day out. And there's so many now that it's bigger than just being the hunk of the high school or of your neighborhood or of your town. It's global now. There's so many. And like I said, what I was referencing, being the narrator of your own story and getting lost in the static of social media. And that's what's happening, as people are completely being disconnected from the organic self and rather being consumed by this digital distortion, projection. And here's what's alarming is that right now we're in this sort of very delicate impasse in the, I guess you could say, technological advancements of the apparatus that is social media and all the technological gadgets that go along with it, is that we're right now entering the mouth of the beast into AI, VR, and AR, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality. And this is not relegated to the realm of conspiracy theory and science fiction anymore. This is really happening. This is not just a Philip K. Dick novel or a William Burroughs novel. This is really happening. And when you think about the implications of that, if social media has had this much of an impact and has caused this much of a mass neuroses and pathology, psychologically, politically, socially, imagine what's going to happen in the age, very rapidly approaching age of VR and AR, augmented and virtual reality, along with the artificial intelligence. It's literally, people are literally going to be consumed. And this is going to tap into the physiology as well. As you guys, most of you have probably heard of Neuralink, the technological advancements being made in sort of transhuman technology and connecting the nervous system with the apparatus in a sort of a virtual immersive experience. That's what social media already is and will be even more. I can't even imagine what this is going to do for, let's say, people who are the PRN addicts and that kind of media with this kind of virtual and artificial intelligence. Just imagine. So I realize now that what I was talking about earlier, feeling this sudden state of emergency to evacuate, was just that, was my spiritual or my instincts. I felt danger. And I felt that right now, this year, I instinctively knew that I needed to get some grounding and needed to disengage and disambiguate from the social media apparatus and that synthetic digital projection of oneself, and really from here on in stay intact, keep that sense of organism, of organic sense of self intact, and keep myself grounded for the oncoming storm. Stay in the eye of the storm, not get swept away with everyone else into this. Really find out who you are, and whatever, in all its gory glory, as it is for me, And this is probably going to vary depending on one's own traumas and one's psychology. For me, for example, I'm kind of getting a little disjointed in my explanation of this, so please bear with me. But I've had a very traumatic upbringing, a lot of bullying. So social media is the perfect addiction. Social media, it's so exploitative in that sense, and designed to be so, as to fire up neuroses and the need to be heard, to be accepted. They really know how to tap into the childhood trauma. And for those of us who have had, extensive childhood trauma, and how those of us whose physiology and whose neurology has been, severely compromised by this social media, it will swallow you whole, right? Which is what many have experienced. And we can't even imagine what that's going to be like for oncoming generations in the virtual realm. And also, with the social media, I really do not like the corporation, the Meta corporation, FB, IG. I don't like that corporation. I'm not going to blame it on the Z man. He's just a person who started a company. But like I said, this is something bigger than any one individual. This is a sort of this new world order kind of concept happening. What's creepy too? I was thinking about, you hear of the revelations and those prophecies. Those prophecies have always been very perplexing for people, but with this modern day technology, it all kind of makes sense. I was thinking about this. It speaks of the number of the beast. We've all heard about this, these prophecies, and those prophecies never made much sense. But when you look at them now, the concept of the number of the beast, it speaks of they will accept the number of the beast in their right hand and in their forehead. I think people probably interpret that as, being some sort of tattoo or some sort of skew mark or something like that. But you think about social media, and what is everyone doing with their devices? The right hand in the forehead, which means like a neural link sort of thing. It's just really eerie how accurate those prophecies are now that they've kind of caught up with the technology and the times, almost like they were totally foreseeing these days that we're in right now. So that's something that I've been thinking about that really kind of gives me the creeps. But where am I at now? Where are we at now as far as what are my plans from here on in? Well, as we know, this is what the world we're living in now. So this is the technology. This is how the commerce of the world is done these days, right? There's no escaping it, really. If you want to exist in the secular cosmopolitan world. Otherwise, you'd have to go Amish. They probably have the right idea, the Amish, actually, when you think about it. You can't even get a job nowadays if you don't have a social media account. There are many employers that will not hire you for that very reason. It's like we almost are being forced against our will to have a social media presence. But I think what's important is to gain some footing and get a sense of self intact and really deal with your traumas and your issues. The very things that will cause you to be bound by social media and the impulsive need and desperation for the need for approval, or to feel, like I said, like like you're back in high school again, trying to find your clique, trying to find where you belong. You know, in high school, I was a complete outcast personally. So I was a sort of pariah. I was a lone wolf. And so I've always had this sort of emptiness or this disconnection with people. And I think there's a part of me that was always sort of seeking that. And now I've come to the point where, you know, I believe that those things happened in my life and I was treated that way at a young age for a reason. And I think it's actually to my benefit. It's actually an asset. The lonerism or the sort of the lone wolf, being an outcast, is an asset for me now, because now I know who I am, right? And I have, you know, gotten to a place now where I really am grounding myself. Our traumas and the traumatic things we've been through, for many of us, are priming us, sort of like a spiritual boot camp, and a psychological boot camp, so to speak. And that's where I'm at today. And where am I going from here on in as far as social media? I'm making a comeback. And that's why I made this video. But it's going to be on my terms, and it's going to be in a very conscious way, and as to not compromise my integrity and my narrative, as I mentioned before. Who's narrating the story? Is it the algorithm or is it me? Okay, but that's what we need to keep intact. Who is the narrative of who you are and who you are being, right? Whether that's online in digital form or organically in physical form as well. I think that's the most important thing for me, is to be the sculptor and not being sculpted by where society is going. So that all being said, that is the consummation of my observations. And there's so much more, you know, there really is. But this video would be like hours long. And maybe I'll make some more videos, you know, a continuation, breaking more of the stuff down. But here's where I'm at, and thank you for watching.